Elias Cole learned two things his first week at Galactic Unity Academy. 1. Anti-grav mats don't cushion falls. If you're under 70 kilograms, they just notice you hit the floor, then log the incident for insurance. 2. Being the only human in a cohort of 12-foot insectoids, lava-blooded brutes, and one species made entirely of calcified gas, meant you became the universal reference point for fragile, underdeveloped, and, once, bite-sized. He didn't complain. Not out loud, anyway. The Academy was everything Earth's recruitment boards promised: elite, diverse, and orbiting a stable star just far enough from the galactic core to avoid the worst radiation zones. But nothing in the orientation materials had prepared him for how hard it was to not be taken seriously when your legs dangled off the classroom chairs, or when someone 3 times your size genuinely asked if your bones were still soft from the larval stage. The nickname Snack stuck by day 3. By day 6, even the instructors used it mostly by accident, but not always. In exobiology lab, Professor Tharnell of the Shikshu Collective had used him as a size marker during a lecture on avian digestion. Now, if this species ingested something approximately the mass of Cadet Cole, yes, you, the human, we'd expect full skeletal ejection within 30 minutes due to internal keratinized shredders. Don't worry, Snack, you'd be dead long before that. Laughter. Elias didn't laugh. He didn't cry, either. He just nodded, adjusted his goggles, and continued documenting spleen folds in a jarred Churok specimen like nothing had happened. Combat simulations were worse. The Academy insisted on non-lethal interspecies calibration training, but that didn't stop Elias from getting tossed like a duffel bag during most scenarios. In one memorable match, a bipedal Thrax student named Vroll hoisted him by the back of his jumpsuit and used him as a bludgeon against a practice dummy. Technically, it was a violation of the conduct code. Vroll claimed he thought Elias was part of the equipment pile. The incident report noted, no permanent injuries, which was true if you didn't count the deep purple bruises and 2 cracked ribs. Medbay confirmed the fractures after a standard skeletal scan. No surgery needed, but they taped his side and prescribed a compression brace along with painkillers. 3 to 4 weeks, minimum, the Academy medic said, handing him a bland protein gel and a low-level anti-inflammatory patch. No further physical simulations, and get more calcium. You're built like wet wood. He did as told. Mostly. No one offered help getting back to class, though the medic did mutter something about re-evaluating human physical clearance standards. The next day, the jokes got sharper. Brittle bones. Soft shell. One instructor even asked if Earth was primarily composed of pillows. Still, Elias remained quiet, methodical. He studied hard, took notes on every species' physiology, especially muscle structure and stress response thresholds. Sometimes he'd pause mid-class and jot something on a private notepad that synced with no public system. Once, during shared lab time, a student named Kenzul of the Ikrin brood noticed strange symbols scrolling across Elias's pad and asked if it was some primitive Terran alphabet. Encryption code, Elias said without looking up. What are you encrypting? Kenzul asked. Elias shrugged. Clearance stuff, for my pet. Kenzul blinked all 6 eyes. You brought a pet? Elias gave a non-committal smile and closed the pad. Later that evening, Elias sat by himself in the observation bay, staring at a holo photo. The image showed a black blur, mid-leap, something massive, 4-limbed, fanged, and beautiful in motion, caught between shadows and starlight. A red tag under the image blinked. Companion clearance. Delayed pending final transport lock. He exhaled slowly and thumbed the tag until it vanished. By midweek, the Academy announced its annual Pet Day. A long-standing tradition, it served as a cultural exchange where cadets showcased their domesticated companions from their home systems. The announcement went out via internal network, and student buzz ignited immediately. The mess hall echoed with excitement. I'm bringing my floater worm, a Tharnell cadet boasted. It glows if you feed it lithium pellets. Mine can fold into itself and vanish for 2 hours. No idea where it goes. I think it's quantum unstable. Elias sat silently 2 tables away, poking at his meal cube, ignoring the greasy throb in his ribs. Bet Snack brings a rock with googly eyes, someone chuckled. No. One of those Terran, what do they call them? Hamsters? Tiny teeth? Then Elias stood up, walked to the registration kiosk by the far wall, and tapped in his credentials. The list of registered participants refreshed. New entry: Cole, Elias, species, Terran, companion, registered. The cafeteria fell silent for 2 long seconds before bursting into fresh laughter. "You're seriously participating?" said a purple-skinned Moltari who'd nicknamed him Spinal Kink earlier in the week. Elias didn't blink. He slid a reinforced leash attachment into his backpack, zipped it slowly, and said in that same calm tone, "Something like that." 2 hours later, the Academy administration filed a customs review flag under category: Hazardous Companion Transport Terran Origin. One logistics officer spent 30 minutes triple-checking a document that included the phrase Apex Synced Organic, GenMod Level 5, and Handler Override required. The officer requested a direct supervisor. The supervisor forwarded it to Central Registry. Registry flagged it for internal review. By then, Elias was back in his room, massaging the dull ache in his ribs and quietly whispering into a secure comms pad. "You're almost here, right?" he murmured. The voice on the other end was human, female, professional. "Touchdown within standard orbit window," she said. "We've confirmed controlled sync stability and neural anchor integrity. You still sure about this, Elias?" He didn't hesitate. "Yeah, he's ready." There was a long pause. "Remember, Elias, this isn't Earth. They don't understand what Apex means, not really." "I know. And Kaiju will only respond to you. If something goes wrong, it won't." Another silence. Then a soft exhale. "Good luck, Handler." He disconnected and laid back, staring at the ceiling's faint starlight projection. "Almost time," he whispered. He felt the old scar above his hip, a thin surgical line from years ago, barely visible now. Kaiju had been smaller then, still learning, still dangerous, even to him. But not anymore. Tomorrow was Pet Day, and Elias Cole, the universal chew toy of the Galactic Unity Academy, was about to bring show and tell to a whole new altitude. The Pet Day arena was usually reserved for low-gravity sport simulations, wall-to-wall cushioned terrain, transparent shielding around the spectator stands, and a calibrated gravity dome designed to mimic the atmospheric comfort levels of all attending species. But on Pet Day, it transformed into a carnival of color, noise, and the occasional controlled biological hazard. Hover platforms buzzed with scent-flaring critters from gas giants. One student had brought a hexapedal sneeze beast from Pulrun 6 that emitted pleasant floral puffs when startled. Another escorted a cage full of chittering, gem-eyed symbiotes who fused into complex fractals when exposed to rhythmic music. It was a grand, weird affair, overflowing with wide-eyed pride. Elias stood in the prep tunnel, holding a matte black leash that required both arms to manage. His side still ached, but he'd refused a follow-up scan that morning, saying the brace was enough. Next to him, Kaiju sat. The predator didn't move, didn't growl, just watched. His amber eyes flicked between overhead drones, the flickering crowd beyond the entrance arch, and Elias himself. He stood at a towering 2.4 meters at the shoulder more, if you counted the thickened dorsal line of fur that rose like a natural mohawk along his spine. He didn't wear armor. He didn't need it. His coat gleamed like obsidian, except where faint silver scars lined his left haunch. 6 fangs protruded even when his mouth was shut, perfectly aligned and cleaned. One paw lay atop the polished floor like a pressure-sensitive landmine. The leash clipped to his collar didn't strain. It didn't need to. The moment the announcement rang out next, Elias Cole, Terran, accompanied by registered companion Kaiju, the arena's internal temperature dropped by 3 degrees. Not technically, but it felt like it. Audience chatter began to falter. Elias stepped forward, quiet as ever. Kaiju followed, unhurried, massive, each step a whisper of potential energy. The arena sensors recalibrated the motion tracking feed and, briefly, froze. Because nothing on the registry matched what they were seeing. The walking tank of fur, muscle, and quiet devastation was not in the expected database, at least, not in the publicly available one. In the stands, jokes died mid-throat. Several students leaned forward. Others reached instinctively for comms or small sidearms they technically weren't supposed to carry. Vroll, the one who'd used Elias as a bludgeon last week, stiffened so hard his neck plates audibly clicked. The sound Kaiju made in response was not a growl. It was quieter, lower, a reminder. Elias gave the leash a small tug, not forceful, just deliberate. Kaiju sat, And then the moment. Kaiju, apex hybrid of Earth's restricted wilderness zone, designed for speed, pain tolerance, and obedience under psychic sync, laid his massive head in Elias's lap and sighed. The crowd didn't gasp, it didn't breathe, because nobody knew what would happen next. "I thought your species bred decorative swimmers," someone muttered into a private comm line. "This is not decorative," another student whispered. Instructors on the upper tier exchanged glances. One of them, a reticulan cognitive swarm named IL-4, slowly backed toward the exit tunnel while issuing a silent emergency ping. It was answered in 3 seconds. Academy security alert, potential threat classification review, unlisted companion breach. Drones deployed, not all of them visibly. Kaiju blinked. And from Elias's lap, he yawned. His teeth could have bitten clean through a shuttle support beam. Instead, he nestled closer, amber eyes half-lidded, relaxed, trusting. The closest alien, a 4-eyed Traug student who had brought a floating psychic sponge, tried to stand and collapsed back into his seat, clearly unwell. Elias Cole, a booming instructor voice, finally cut in, filtered through comms and interspecies translators. "Please state your companion's classification for the record." Elias tapped a control pad on his wrist. A hologram sprang into the air above him. Name, Kaiju. Species base, Terran hybrid, Canidae, Felidae baseline. Designation, Apex companion. Gen mod level 5. Emotional sync, biometric lock, human only. Handler, Elias Cole. Command tier, exclusive neural bridge, single soul clearance. Restrictions, military grade, non-transferable, containment, fail-proof. Training origin, Luna Prime Blackwood Reserve, Terran Government Program, Apex Familiar Initiative, Echo Line. For a full 5 seconds, nobody spoke. Then someone, an instructor, climbed into a ceiling vent and stayed there. Emergency protocols activated. The arena lights dimmed, and "Don't," he said softly. Kaiju didn't move, not even a twitch. "Handler," came a quieter voice, head medic Dr. Rallis, a tall, amphibious being with soft green skin and slow, deliberate motions. "Your companion, is he stable?" "Yes." "Is he sedated?" "No." "Then why?" Dr. Rallis said carefully. "Is he not reacting to the heightened stress and threat levels in the room?" Elias scratched behind Kaiju's left ear. The hybrid closed his eyes in bliss. "Because he knows I'm not afraid," Elias replied. "And because I haven't said the word." That silenced even the security drones. Behind the main instructor panel, 3 administrators held an urgent sidebar. "Did Earth authorize this?" one of them hissed. "Technically, yes. Look at the clearance." "He's not military." "No, but he is registered under the Blackwood Handler program. He passed the neural compatibility trials. No one under Level 7 regulation can override his command bond. Not even us." They glanced again at the floor, where a creature the size of a cargo hauler was now gently licking Elias's hand like a sleepy lapdog. "We're going to get complaints. We're going to get envoys." 10 meters away, Vrol, still trembling, finally found the courage to speak. "You keep that thing in your room?" "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." "Why?" Elias turned toward him, calm, unblinking. "Because I trust him." Vrol opened his mouth to respond, but Kaiju shifted just slightly. A paw broad enough to crush a crate lifted and returned to the floor with a faint thud. Vrol sat down again. The remainder of Pet Day went quietly. The other students presented their pets as scheduled, but attention was scarce. Even the psychic jellyfish that recited poetry got ignored. By event's end, Kaiju was officially declared containment stable, though the report included 14 caveats, 12 alerts, and one recommendation to add an escape-proof perimeter to all future Academy pet events. Later that night, in the medbay, an alien student named Gexar arrived in a state of acute anxiety. Apparently, during the event, he'd tried to activate a restraint field near Elias out of precaution. The feedback coil had misfired, slamming into his left shoulder and dislocating it. By the next rotation, the whispers had shifted. Elias still wore the same standard-issue Academy jumpsuit, still walked with that upright, quiet gait, still sat at the edge of his cafeteria seat like the chairs weren't built for someone with a spine that flexed in just 2 directions. His tray still had the same nutrient bricks and lukewarm tea substitute. None of that changed. But no one called him Snack anymore. They called him Handler. It wasn't said loudly, more like a title muttered with the careful reverence of a warning label. Cadets gave him a wide berth, not out of fear of Elias, but of what might be sleeping in the adjacent dorm room. Even Vroll, the walking slab of corded muscle who'd once hoisted Elias mid-combat sim, offered a small nod in passing. Not an apology, not exactly, just the kind of silent truce one predator offered another's keeper. That week, Elias noticed several subtle changes. For one, the cafeteria chairs near him started adjusting automatically. It was probably just a systems patch, but now the seatbacks conformed to his spine, and the table lowered to something closer to a human sitting height. The last time he'd eaten without his knees knocking against the underside of a table had been back on Earth. Second, his shared lab team no longer used him as a unit of measure. No fragile mass comments. No brittlebone jokes. Instead, Kenzul, the same Ikreen who once teased his encryption notes, now asked him detailed questions about Earth's wildlife. So this kaiju, Kenzul, began during a joint ecology assignment. He's a hybrid, right? A manufactured predator? Elias glanced up from his notes. He's a descendant of natural apex lines. But yeah, there's GenMod, designed to bond, not obey. There's a difference. You keep calling him a companion, but he's more like a weapon. He's not a weapon, he's my responsibility. Kenzul tapped a claw against the edge of his tablet. Your planet breeds those as pets? Elias shrugged. Some people build war drones. We figured out how to raise loyalty from birth. Across the room, a glimmer of iridescent fur drifted past the observation window. Kaiju, currently restricted to the companion habitat zone, had been given his own enclosure. Academy policy required it. But Elias visited twice daily, not out of obligation, out of routine, out of something more. One afternoon, during a stress physiology lecture, a visiting scholar from the Galactic Medicinal Corps presented a data slide of species-by-species physical resilience. The chart used a color-coded toughness index based on regenerative capabilities, pain thresholds, and combat survivability. Humans were placed fourth from the bottom, ranked under average due to poor dermal resistance, low bone density, and moderate internal redundancy, the scholar said. Though surprisingly robust in endocrine trauma tolerance, see here adrenaline reactions up to 500% above baseline under stress. Elias raised a hand. Does the chart factor psychological conditioning from apex exposure? The scholar blinked. Pardon? On Earth, some of us grow up training with predatory companions, biological ones, not programmed machines. How does that change the fragility index? The room quieted. The scholar adjusted his chart, scrolling manually through subcategories. Ah, there it is. Under the Apex Familiar Program. Well, that's an anomaly. He paused. This entry was reclassified as a Level 7 Contingency Index. Kenzul leaned closer to Elias. That's 2 steps above high-risk symbiote pairs. Elias didn't reply. He was already writing something in his pad again, a personal log tagged with neural sync markers. Private. 3 days later, Kaiju growled for the first time. It happened during a late study session in the companion habitat zone. Elias had been running behavior mapping algorithms on his tablet, noting neural drift patterns and mood modulation during simulated threat drills. Kaiju, curled beside him, perked up ears rotating, muscles rippling beneath that jet-black coat. Then came the sound. Low, guttural, not hostile, protective. A student had wandered too close a first year from a new intake. Curious, naive, unaware. Kaiju rose, body rippling in one smooth, terrifying motion. The student froze. I just wanted to see. Elias held up a hand. Stop moving. The student obeyed instantly. Kaiju didn't lunge. He didn't bare teeth. He simply stood between Elias and the newcomer, tail low, breath steady, eyes locked. The tension broke when Elias whispered a phrase. 3 words. You didn't do anything wrong, Elias said, but he doesn't like sudden approaches. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I know. Kaiju watched, but stayed still. I didn't think anything from Earth could look like that. Elias offered a tight smile. Most people don't. The student backed away slowly, then left. Kaiju relaxed a moment later, letting out a long exhale through his nose and returning to his resting spot. "Good boy," Elias murmured, resting his hand behind one ear. The real shift happened after the Academy revised its companion policies. Following the Pet Day incident, now quietly referred to as the Kaiju event, in internal documentation, the administrative board convened an emergency session. Their report included an updated species threat matrix. Previously, Earth life forms had been classified as Level 3 hazard, non-persistent threat, on par with wild brutes from oxygen-rich moons. Now, Terran hybrids had their own tier, Level 7 contingency, apex synced biologic. Alongside the reclassification came a new requirement. Any student with a Terran companion, rated GenMod 4 or above, would now require daily sync audits and emotional drift analysis. Elias complied with every one of them, quietly, methodically, never missed a session. The auditors found nothing unusual, no spikes in aggression, no lapses in control. If anything, Kaiju's sync signature with Elias was too clean, like they weren't just bonded, but aligned at the neurological level. "He doesn't need orders," Elias explained once during a review. "He just needs me to be okay." The auditor looked up. "What happens if you're not okay?" Elias didn't answer. Neither did Kaiju, who sat 3 meters away, eyes locked on the auditor's pulse rate monitor. That day, the review concluded early. By the end of the second week, the Academy felt different. Not fearful, just calibrated. Elias found himself approached more often, but not for the reasons he expected. A student from the silicon-based Kantari approached him during lunch. "Handler Cole," it said in a soft tone, "I believe I may have misjudged your species." Elias looked up, brow raised. "You are not what I imagined, neither is your world." Elias sipped his tea. "Most people think Earth's soft because we are." "A common error," the Kantari said. "We assumed fragility meant weakness." Elias didn't smile, but his voice warmed. "Fragile things learn to be careful. Careful things learn to survive." He paused, then added, "Sometimes that's the difference between harmless and dangerous." The final month of Elias Cole's first term at Galactic Unity Academy passed with a quiet kind of tension. Not the kind that preceded disaster, but the kind that came when an entire institution was recalibrating its understanding of a species. The new interspecies relations textbook, freshly revised and released ahead of schedule, now included a sidebar labeled Terran Apex Protocols, Containment versus Cooperation. It featured a photo of Kaiju mid-stride beside Elias, taken during a behavioral sync test. Elias hadn't authorized it, but didn't contest it either. Below the image was a disclaimer. All Terran companions above GenMod 3 must be considered emotionally keyed rather than command-trained. Do not interpret silence as docility. No one argued with that. In the following weeks, Elias was invited to speak, not officially, not as a lecturer, but informally. At first, it was just a curious student here, a cautious instructor there. Then came requests from xenopsychology cadets, then military tacticians studying non-digital threat response. Even the companion biology program, which had previously blacklisted Terran pair bonding models, quietly asked for observation sessions. Elias agreed, but on his terms. No tranquilizers, no cages, no false analogies. Kaiju would not be discussed like a tool. He wasn't a weapon, and he wasn't a lesson. He was Elias's partner. And he was still growing. It wasn't all smooth. 2 weeks before finals, during a storm simulation in the Biosphere Dome, an automated weather cycle malfunctioned. High-pressure gusts destabilized the dome's inner wind barriers, causing a partial collapse of the observation railings above the live simulation area. 3 students fell. One, a featherlight alien from the low-gravity world, Elixir, suffered a dislocated hip and a cracked wrist. The other 2 suffered bruises, nothing worse. But the falling metal, the noise, the sudden system panic, all of it triggered Kaiju's protective response. He was in the simulation area with Elias at the time, running synchronized movement trials. 1 second, he was trotting behind his handler. The next, he'd caught a student mid-air in his jaws. Not clamped, not bitten, caught. Gently, as if she were an egg. Elias had reacted immediately, giving the override phrase that reset Kaiju's focus and brought him back into sync. The student, stunned but unharmed, was released into his arms. She was still shaking, but alive. Medbay cleared her in an hour. Nothing more than shock and a sprained ankle. But the footage went viral on the Academy's closed network. 3 seconds of motion, a blur of black fur, a scream, a gentle landing. And then Kaiju, lowering his head into Elias's lap as though nothing had happened. From that moment, the Academy's tone changed completely. A week later, Chancellor Dorell herself summoned Elias to her office. Dorell was a crystalline being, elongated and faceted, her internal light pulses synchronized to her emotional patterns. When Elias stepped inside the room, Kaiju at his side, the pulses slowed not in fear but in deference. "Mr. Cole," she said, each syllable filtered through her voice modulator. "I have reviewed the footage. I've reviewed everything." Elias didn't sit until she gestured to a seat modified for his posture. He didn't speak first. "I will be honest," Dorell said. "Your admission was controversial, not because of your performance, your grades are well above standard, but because your species puzzled us." Elias nodded once. "We're good at that." She tilted her head. "You've made us reconsider many things, about classification, about assumption, and about trust." Kaiju, lying by Elias's chair, yawned. Dorell leaned slightly forward. "I would like to offer you a provisional advisory role, not as an instructor, as a liaison, a bridge between Terran behavioral sciences and our companion integration program." Elias hesitated. "I'm still a first year." "Yes, but you are the only first-year cadet whose companion triggered a galactic reassessment of Earth's biohazard potential." He looked down at Kaiju. The hybrid blinked, entirely uninterested in galactic bureaucracy. "I'll consider it," Elias said. "Good. That's all I ask." As he turned to leave, Dorell added, "One last question, Mr. Cole." Elias glanced back. "Do you ever feel unsafe, being so small among so many who are not?" He paused. "No, not anymore." Kaiju rose to his feet in a single motion, silent as the gravity field, and they walked out together. Finals came and went. Elias aced biocultural systems, placed fourth in neural ethics, and submitted a behavior analysis project titled Symbiotic Autonomy in Emotionally Bonded Apex Creatures that caused the department to schedule on the last day of term, just before departure for the mid-cycle break. Elias returned to the companion habitat zone for a final check. Kaiju's enclosure had grown, expanded walls, deeper terrain, even a thermal spring pool imported from one of the Academy's outer moons. And yet, as always, Kaiju preferred to curl near the entrance, close to the path Elias walked every day. He wasn't behind glass, wasn't leashed. He simply waited. Elias stepped in, crouched, and scratched behind the hybrid's ear. "You ready to go home?" Kaiju huffed gently, breath warm on his palm. "Transport leaves in 2 hours. I filed your clearance already. 1 flight, then 2 hours in cryo. We'll be back at the reserve by sunset." A pause. Time to rest, for both of us. He stood, turned, and stopped when he saw Kenzul waiting outside the enclosure gate. The Ikrin was holding a small datapad. "Sorry to interrupt." "You're not." I wanted to say thank you." Elias raised a brow. "For what?" "For changing what we thought we knew," Kenzul gestured toward Kaiju. "For proving that something doesn't have to be controlled to be trusted. That bonded doesn't mean broken." Elias smiled, small and tired. "Thanks. Will you be back next cycle?" "I'll try." Kenzul paused, hesitant. "What happens if someone else tries to handle one of those?" Elias's smile faded, not unkindly. "They won't." At Departure Bay 7, Elias boarded the long-range transport with Kaiju walking close behind. The loading crew gave them space. One technician dropped his tool and muttered something about predator proximity anxiety. Elias pretended not to hear it. Kaiju curled into his custom cryopod with minimal prompting, the reinforced chamber more like a den than a kennel. It sealed smoothly, oxygen cycling gently, sync monitors blinking in green. Elias settled into his own pod, sensors locking onto vitals, neural bridge temporarily disengaged for transit safety. As the chamber began its gentle cooling cycle, Elias whispered, "Good job this term, buddy. See you when we land." The lid sealed. Outside, the ship's manifest auto tagged the flight. Passenger, Elias Cole. Species, Terran. Role, Cadet, Handler. Companion manifest, Kaiju. Level 7, Apex synced. Beneath it, a single clearance code shimmered across the display. Do not separate. Back at Galactic Unity Academy, the nickname Snack was never used again. In its place, across every hall, every databank,